The massive dragon lay chained in the deepest pit of the Galactic Council's maximum security prison. His scales, once brilliant emerald, had dulled to a sickly gray after decades of captivity. The creature's name was Zirak, though none of the guards bothered to learn it. To them, he was simply Prisoner 773D9, the last of his kind. Every species in the galaxy had tried to communicate with him. The telepathic Voidians had attempted mind melding, only to encounter an impenetrable mental wall. The crystalline harmonics had sung their most complex frequency patterns, receiving nothing but silence in return. Even the ancient ethereals, masters of all known languages, had failed to break through to the dragon's consciousness. The council had grown tired of the experiments. After 47 years of failed attempts, they had declared Zirak a lost cause. The dragon was scheduled for termination in 3 standard days. The decision was unanimous, except for one small voice that nobody paid attention to. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the only human researcher on the project, sat in her cramped office reviewing the files one last time. Humans were still considered newcomers to the galactic community, having only made first contact 12 years ago. Most species viewed them as primitive and irrelevant, barely worth acknowledging. Elena had only been assigned to the Dragon Project because they needed someone to handle the paperwork. She pulled up the holographic display of Zirak's first capture. The dragon had been found drifting in space near the Andromeda border, his massive ship disabled and broken. When the Council fleet approached, he had not resisted. Instead, he had simply allowed himself to be taken as if he had been waiting for them. What puzzled Elena most was the ornate necklace the dragon wore. It was the only possession he had been allowed to keep, deemed harmless by the security scans. The necklace appeared to be made of an unknown metal, with intricate symbols carved along its surface. Every species had examined it, but none could identify the writing system. Elena zoomed in on the symbols, her heart racing as a wild idea formed in her mind. The markings looked almost familiar, but not in the way she expected. They reminded her of something from Earth's ancient history, something she had studied during her archaeology minor in college. She opened her personal files and pulled up images of Mesopotamian cuneiform, Egyptian hieroglyphs, and Sanskrit texts. The dragon's symbols shared certain structural similarities with these ancient writing systems, but they were far more complex. It was as if someone had taken the basic concepts of Earth's early languages and evolved them over thousands of years. A crazy thought struck her. What if the dragon's people had visited Earth in humanity's distant past? What if the legends of dragons in human mythology were actually historical accounts, passed down through generations until they became fairy tales? Elena spent the next 18 hours cross-referencing the symbols with every ancient Earth language she could access. Slowly, patterns began to emerge. The dragon's writing system followed grammatical rules similar to Proto-Indo-European, but with additional complexity that suggested advanced mathematical and scientific concepts. By the time the prison's artificial dawn cycle began, Elena had managed to decode 3 simple symbols: time, home, and waiting. Her hands trembled as she realized the implications. If she was right, then Zirak had been trying to communicate something about time, possibly about waiting for something or someone to come home. She gathered her research and headed to the dragon's cell. The 2 guards at the entrance barely looked up as she passed. Dr. Vasquez often came to observe the prisoner, though they couldn't understand why she bothered. The dragon never moved, never responded, never showed any sign of awareness. The cell was a massive circular chamber carved directly into an asteroid. Zirak lay in the center, his enormous form barely fitting in the space. His eyes were closed and his breathing was so slow that Elena sometimes wondered if he was still alive. The necklace glinted weakly around his thick neck, the symbols catching the harsh artificial light. Elena activated her recording device and began to speak, using her best approximation of what she believed might be the dragon's language. The words felt strange on her human tongue, but she pressed on slowly and carefully, pronouncing each syllable. Zirak. Kelthan. Morden. Shea. She was attempting to say, Zirak, I understand, you are waiting, tell me. For several minutes nothing happened. Elena felt foolish, standing there speaking gibberish to a creature that had remained silent for nearly 5 decades. She was about to give up when one massive eye opened. The eye was larger than Elena's entire head, a swirling amber color that seemed to hold depths of ancient wisdom and immeasurable sadness. The dragon's gaze fixed on her with an intensity that made her step backward involuntarily. Then for the first time in 47 years, Zyrak spoke. His voice was like distant thunder, deep and resonant, filling the chamber with vibrations that Elena felt in her bones. The words came slowly, as if he was remembering how to use his voice after so long in silence. Little star daughter, you remember the old words? Elena's heart pounded with excitement and terror. She had been right. The dragon could speak, and more importantly, he recognized her attempt at communication. The translator implant in her ear was struggling to process his speech, but she could understand enough to realize he had called her star daughter. I am Elena, she said, switching back to standard galactic but speaking slowly. I am human. From Earth. The dragon's eye widened and something that might have been hope flickered in its amber depths. He lifted his great head slightly, the chains around his neck clanking with the movement. Earth, he repeated, the word carrying a weight of memory and longing. The first world where we planted the seeds. Elena felt the universe shift around her. Seeds? What seeds? Had the dragons really visited Earth in the past? Had they influenced human development somehow? Before she could ask, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Red lights flashed, and the automated security system announced the beginning of the prisoner's final 48-hour countdown. In 2 days, unless something changed dramatically, the last dragon in the galaxy would be executed. Elena looked into Zyrak's ancient eye and made a decision that would change everything. She was going to save him, even if it meant defying the entire Galactic Council. But first, she needed to understand what the dragon had been waiting for all these years. The necklace around his neck began to glow softly, its symbols pulsing with a faint inner light. Zyrak's gaze shifted to the ornament, then back to Elena. The time has come, he whispered. The children of Earth have returned to the stars. Elena's mind raced as she stared at the glowing necklace. The symbols were now clearly visible, pulsing with a rhythm that seemed almost like a heartbeat. She pulled out her scanner and began recording everything, knowing that she would need proof of what was happening. Zyrak, she said carefully, what do you mean by children of Earth? What seeds did your people plant there? The dragon's massive head turned toward her, and she could see intelligence burning in his ancient eyes. When he spoke, his voice was stronger than before, as if their conversation was awakening something that had been sleeping for decades. Long, long ago, when your world was young, my people traveled between stars. Zyrak's words came slowly but with growing confidence. We found a small blue world with simple life, but greater potential. Elena felt her breath catch. You're talking about Earth? Millions of years ago? Not million, the dragon corrected, his voice carrying a note of sadness. Thousands. Your years. We came when your ancestors were learning to make fire, to speak, to dream. The implications hit Elena like a physical blow. The dragons had been on Earth during humanity's early development. They had witnessed the rise of human civilization, maybe even influenced it somehow. The seeds, she pressed. What were the seeds you planted? Zyrak's eye closed for a moment, as if he was accessing memories buried deep in time. When he opened it again, Elena saw something that looked like pride mixed with deep regret. Not seeds. In ground, he explained slowly. Seeds. In minds. In hearts. We gave your people gifts, language, complex thinking, the ability to reach for stars. Elena's hand moved unconsciously to her throat, where her own research pendant hung. She thought about humanity's rapid development compared to other species, how humans had gone from cave paintings to space travel in just a few thousand years, while other civilizations had taken much longer. But something went wrong, she said, reading the sadness in his expression. What happened? The dragon's great head lowered, and his voice became barely above a whisper. War came to my people, the Shadow Fleet, from beyond, the galaxy's edge. They sought to destroy all traces of our gifts. Elena had never heard of any Shadow Fleet, but she filed the information away. Right now she needed to understand why Zyrak had been waiting in this prison for so long. My people scattered Across the void, Zyrak continued. Some fought, some hid. I came here to wait for the children of Earth. To find the star. Wait, Elena said, her mind spinning. You came here deliberately? You allowed yourself to be captured? The necklace. Zyrak's gaze shifted to the glowing ornament around his neck. It carries the coordinates to our greatest treasure, but only a child of Earth can read them. Elena stared at the pulsing symbols with new understanding. This wasn't just jewelry or a simple communication device. It was a star map, a key to something the dragons had hidden away, and somehow it required human involvement to function. What treasure? She asked, though part of her already suspected the answer would change everything. The archive, Zyrak said, his voice filled with reverence. All knowledge of my people, all technologies, all wisdom. We hid it, where only the Star Children could find it. Elena's scanner was going crazy, detecting energy readings unlike anything in the galactic databases. The necklace wasn't just glowing now. It was resonating with some kind of quantum field that her instruments could barely measure. She looked around the prison cell, suddenly aware of how exposed they were. If the council discovered what was happening, they would never let her continue this research. They would study the necklace themselves, probably destroy it in the process, and execute Zyrak as planned. How long do we have? She asked. The countdown has begun, Zyrak said, lifting his great head to look at the blinking red lights. 47 hours. But that is enough. If you can decode the star path. Elena pulled up her research on her portable computer, showing Zyrak the work she had done matching his symbols to ancient Earth languages. The dragon's eyes studied her efforts with what looked like approval. Clever, star daughter, he rumbled. You remember the old ways, even though your people forgot. But this is only its beginning. The true language is written in mathematics of stars. As if responding to his words, the necklace began projecting a holographic display above them. Elena gasped as she saw what appeared to be a three-dimensional star chart, but unlike any navigation system she had ever encountered. The stars moved and pulsed in patterns that seemed to follow some kind of cosmic rhythm. Each symbol represents stellar coordinates, combined with temporal markers, Zyrak explained. Your people's ancient mathematics provides the key to reading time-space relationships. Elena began furiously taking notes, recording everything she could. The mathematics involved were incredibly complex, but she could see how they built on principles that appeared in ancient human texts. Somehow, the dragons had embedded advanced physics concepts into humanity's early mathematical understanding. But I'm just one person, Elena said, feeling overwhelmed by the magnitude of what she was discovering. Even if I can decode this, how can I convince the council to spare your life? They've already made their decision. Zyrak's massive form shifted slightly, and Elena heard the sound of his chains rattling. For the first time, she noticed that the restraints were beginning to show signs of stress. Hairline fractures were appearing in the supposedly unbreakable alloy. The archive contains more than knowledge, the dragon said, his voice taking on a note of warning. It contains weapons that can stop the Shadow Fleet. They return, Star Daughter. The darkness comes again. Elena felt ice form in her veins. They're coming back? Here, to our galaxy? Long-range sensors of the Council have detected anomalies at Galaxy's edge, Zyrak confirmed. But they do not understand what they see. Only the archive holds the knowledge to defend against them. Elena's mind raced through the implications. If Zyrak was telling the truth, then the entire galaxy was in danger from some unknown threat. The dragon's execution wasn't just the death of the last of his species. It might be the destruction of their only hope for survival. The necklace pulsed brighter, and new symbols appeared in the holographic display. Elena recognized some of them from her research, but others were completely alien. The star chart was changing, showing movement patterns that suggested something massive approaching from intergalactic space. How much time do we have? She asked, though she dreaded the answer. The Shadow Fleet traveled slowly, but inevitably, Zyrak said. Perhaps 3 of your years before they reach the outer systems. Elena looked at the countdown timer on the wall. 46 hours until Zyrak's execution. 3 years until an unknown enemy arrived. And she was the only person in the galaxy who might be able to prevent both disasters. She made her decision. "I'm going to get you out of here," she said firmly. "But first I need to understand how to read this star map completely. Can you teach me?" The dragon's eye fixed on her with an intensity that seemed to see straight through to her soul. "Teaching. You will bond our minds temporarily. You will then see the memories of my people, feel their pain, their hope." Elena squared her shoulders. "I'm ready. Then let the sharing begin," Zyrak whispered, and the necklace blazed with light. The moment Elena touched the glowing necklace, reality exploded around her. Her consciousness was swept away from the prison cell and into a torrent of memories that spanned millennia. She saw through Zyrak's eyes, felt through his ancient heart, and experienced the rise and fall of an entire civilization. She was flying through space on wings that could fold reality, part of a massive fleet of dragons heading toward a small blue world. The year was approximately 8000 BCE by human reckoning, and Earth was a primitive world inhabited by scattered tribes of early humans. But the dragons saw something special in these hairless creatures who had recently learned to farm and build permanent settlements. "They have the spark," Zyrak's voice echoed in the memory, speaking to his mate Silas as they approached Earth's atmosphere. "The gift of imagination combined with determination. They will reach the stars if given the chance." Elena experienced the dragon's first contact with humanity. Unlike the violent invasions depicted in human mythology, it had been a careful, gentle process. The dragons had appeared to early humans as wise teachers, sharing knowledge slowly and carefully. They taught improved mathematics, better farming techniques, and most importantly, advanced language structures that would allow humans to think in more complex patterns. But Elena also felt the dragons' growing concern. Their long-range sensors had detected movement in the void between galaxies. The Shadow Fleet was stirring, an ancient enemy that consumed entire civilizations and left nothing but empty space in their wake. "We must prepare them faster," Silas had argued during one of the dragon councils on Earth. "The shadows come closer, and humans need time to grow strong. Too much, too fast, and we destroy what makes them special," Zyrak had replied. "They must develop naturally with only subtle guidance. Otherwise, they become dependent on us instead of learning to stand on their own." Elena watched as the dragons made their fateful decision. They would plant the seeds of advanced knowledge in human culture, then withdraw to let humanity develop independently. The dragons themselves would scatter across the galaxy, each carrying pieces of their greatest technologies and knowledge. When humans finally reached the stars, they would be able to find and reunite these scattered archives. But the plan had a terrible flaw. The Shadow Fleet arrived sooner than expected. Elena screamed as she experienced the first attack on the dragon homeworld. The Shadow Fleet ships were like living nightmares, biological vessels that consumed matter and energy, leaving behind only darkness and despair. The dragons fought bravely, but they were outnumbered and caught off guard. She felt Zyrak's anguish as he received the final transmission from his mate. Silas had been leading the evacuation of their people's greatest archive when the shadows found her. Her last words had been a promise that their sacrifices would not be meaningless, that the star children of Earth would one day find the hidden knowledge and use it to stop the darkness forever. The memory shifted, and Elena experienced Zyrak's long journey to the Galactic Council prison. He had come here deliberately, knowing that eventually humans would join the galactic community. He had waited decades for the right person to find him, someone who could bridge the gap between ancient dragon wisdom and human intuition. When the sharing ended, Elena found herself back in the prison cell, tears streaming down her face. She understood now why Zyrak had seemed so sad, why he had accepted captivity so willingly. He was the last guardian of his people's legacy, carrying the weight of an entire civilization's hopes. "The coordinates," she whispered, looking at the necklace with new understanding. "They lead to all the hidden archives?" 7 locations, Zyrak confirmed, his voice gentle with shared grief. "Each contains part of the whole, but the primary archive on Kepler 442b holds the key to everything." Elena pulled up her star charts, quickly locating the planet Zyrak had mentioned. Kepler 442b was in the habitable zone of its star, but it had been marked as uninhabitable by Council surveys due to dangerous energy readings in its atmosphere. The Council already knows about that planet, she said. They declared it off limits 50 years ago. Because my people's defenses still function, Zyrak explained. Only a human can pass through them safely. The dragons that programmed the barriers to recognize Earth's children. Elena's scanner beeped urgently. Security guards were approaching the cell for their routine inspection. She quickly shut down her equipment and tried to look casual, but her mind was racing with plans. The two Voidian guards entered the cell, their translucent forms shimmering slightly in the artificial light. They glanced at Elena with their usual indifference, then performed their standard checks on Zyrak's restraints and vital signs. Prisoner shows elevated brain activity, one guard noted, studying his scanner readings. Heart rate increased. Possible signs of distress. Elena held her breath, hoping they wouldn't investigate further. The last thing she needed was for the Council to realize that Zyrak was finally communicating. Probably just the approach of termination time. The second guard replied dismissively. Even animals can sense their doom approaching. Continue monitoring, but no changes to the schedule. After they left, Elena waited several minutes before speaking again. Zyrak, I need to know exactly what's in the primary archive. If I'm going to convince the Council to spare your life, I need proof that this threat is real. The necklace pulsed again, and new symbols appeared in Elena's vision. This time, instead of star charts, she saw technical specifications for weapons and defense systems that were far beyond anything in the current galactic arsenal. Shield, harmonics, that can deflect shadow, weapon, Zyrak explained as the images flowed past. Quantum, torpedoes, that can disrupt their bioships. And most important, the location of their home dimension. Elena's eyes widened. Home dimension? You mean they're not from this universe? The shadows exist between realities, Zyrak said grimly. They consume one galaxy, then move to next dimension, but my people found a way to seal the doorways. The technical data was overwhelming, but Elena could see enough to realize that this technology could revolutionize galactic defense. The problem was that she was just one human researcher with no political power or influence. Even if I can prove all this, she said, the Council will never believe me. They'll think I'm making it up to save you. Then we must provide demonstration, Zyrak said, and his restraints began to glow with the same energy as his necklace. The chains that bind me are quantum locked, but the archive contains the key to breaking any prison. Elena watched in amazement as the supposedly unbreakable restraints began to dissolve. The quantum locks that had held Zyrak for nearly 50 years were unraveling like melting ice. You could have escaped any time, she asked in shock. Escape was never the goal, Zyrak replied, stretching his massive wings for the first time in decades. I needed to wait for you, the Star Child, who could read the ancient ways. The dragon's full size was incredible. Even in the large cell, his wings nearly touched the walls when fully extended. Elena realized that the Council had built this prison specifically to contain him, and now he was free. What happens now? She asked, feeling both terrified and exhilarated. Now, we go to Kepler 442b, Zyrak said, his voice filled with newfound purpose. We retrieve the archive and prepare for war. But first, we must convince your people to join the fight. Alarms began blaring as the security system detected Zyrak's escape. Elena could hear running footsteps in the corridors outside, voices shouting orders, weapons powering up. They'll never let us leave, Elena said, panic rising in her chest. Zyrak's eyes began to glow with an inner fire. Little star daughter, you have much to learn about dragon capabilities. The necklace blazed with light, and Elena felt reality bend around them. Space folded, time twisted, and suddenly they were no longer in the prison cell. They were floating in the vast emptiness of space. with Zyrak's massive form protecting Elena in a bubble of breathable atmosphere. Behind them, the prison asteroid was shrinking rapidly as they moved away at impossible speeds. How? Elena gasped, staring at the impossible sight. The gifts. My people had left. In human consciousness, Zyrak explained as they flew between the stars. They included the ability to navigate space-time. You just needed the right teacher. Elena looked at her hands and realized they were glowing with the same energy as the dragon's necklace. Somehow her contact with Zyrak had awakened something dormant in her human genetics, something the dragons had planted there thousands of years ago. Welcome to your heritage, Star Daughter, Zyrak said as they approached the coordinates for Kepler 442b. Now, let us reclaim what was lost. Elena looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from dozens of worlds that would soon be under attack. Not just any pilot, she said quietly. Me. I'm the only person who has successfully interfaced with dragon technology. I'm the human key they've been waiting for. The chamber erupted in arguments and debates, but Elena could see that the tide was turning. The evidence was too comprehensive to ignore, and the alternative was too terrible to accept. The vote, when it finally came, was unanimous. The galaxy would prepare for war. Kepler 442b appeared before them like a jewel against the black void of space. The planet was beautiful but deadly, its atmosphere crackling with energy storms that would destroy any normal spacecraft. Elena could see why the Galactic Council had declared it off limits. The entire world seemed to pulse with barely contained power. The defenses, Zyrak explained as they approached the outer atmosphere, were designed to prevent the Shadow Fleet from claiming our archives. Only beings with the genetic markers we planted in humanity can pass through safely. Elena felt the energy field wash over them as they descended through the planet's atmosphere. Her skin tingled, and she could sense the defensive system scanning her, recognizing something in her DNA that had been sleeping for thousands of years. It's like coming home, she whispered, surprised by the emotion in her voice. The planet's surface was unlike anything Elena had ever seen. Crystalline structures rose from the landscape like frozen music, their surfaces reflecting colors that had no names. In the distance, she could see what appeared to be a massive city, but it was clearly not built for any species currently known to the galaxy. Your people built all this? Elena asked as Zyrak landed near the city's outskirts. Not built, the dragon corrected, folding his wings carefully. Grown. We learned to shape matter at the quantum level, to encourage crystals and metals to form in patterns that serve our needs. As they approached the city, Elena noticed that some of the structures were responding to their presence. Doorways that had been sealed for millennia began to open, and pathways lit up with soft, welcoming light. The city remembers, Zyrak said with obvious emotion. It knows that its builders' students have finally returned. The central archive was a massive spire that reached toward the sky like a crystalline tree. As they entered its base, Elena gasped at the sight of countless data storage devices, each one containing information that could advance galactic civilization by centuries. But what truly took her breath away was the holographic display at the center of the chamber. It showed real-time tracking of the Shadow Fleet's movements, and the situation was far worse than Zyrak had indicated. They're not 3 years away, Elena said, studying the display in horror. According to this, they'll reach the outer systems in 18 months. The archive has been monitoring their approach, Zyrak confirmed grimly. Their bioships have been accelerating, feeding on the energy of dead stars they pass. They grow stronger as they approach. Elena examined the fleet composition data and her blood ran cold. The Shadow Fleet consisted of hundreds of massive bioships, each one capable of consuming an entire planet. But worse than their size was their nature. These weren't mechanical vessels but living creatures evolved specifically for galactic conquest. How did your people ever fight them before? She asked. We didn't fight them, Zyrak replied sadly. We fled. My people were scholars and teachers, not warriors. When the shadows came, we could only run and hide our knowledge, hoping that someday someone else would be strong enough to face them. Elena turned to study the defensive technologies stored in the archive. The quantum shield generators were impressive, but they were designed for protecting planets, not for offensive operations. The energy weapons were powerful but required massive amounts of energy to operate effectively. There has to be something more, she muttered, searching through the databases. Some weakness, some way to actually defeat them. That's when she found it buried deep in the most classified sections of the archive. A single file labeled The Heart of Darkness in the ancient dragon script. When she opened it, her hands began shaking. "Zirak," she called urgently. "You need to see this." The dragon approached and studied the holographic display Elena had activated. His massive form went completely still as he read the information. "Impossible," he whispered. This was classified beyond my clearance level. How did you access it?" "The archive responded to my human genetics," Elena explained. "It gave me access to everything. Zirak, your people didn't just study the Shadow Fleet. They found their point of origin. The file contained detailed analysis of the Shadow Fleet's home dimension, a realm of pure entropy, where matter and energy were constantly being consumed and converted into something else. But more importantly, it contained the location of the dimensional anchor that kept the doorway between realities open. If we could destroy this anchor, Elena said, pointing to the technical specifications, we could trap them in their home dimension permanently. "The risks," Zirak began, but Elena interrupted him. "The risks of doing nothing are worse. Look at these projections. If they consume our galaxy, they'll have enough energy to force open doorways to dozens of other dimensions. This isn't just about saving our galaxy anymore. It's about stopping them from spreading to countless others." Elena began downloading the relevant files to her portable storage device, but she quickly realized that the information was too vast for any normal storage medium. The archive contained the accumulated knowledge of an entire civilization. "There's too much," she said in frustration. "Even if I could carry all this data, how would I convince the Galactic Council to believe it? They'll think it's an elaborate hoax." "Then we must bring proof they cannot deny," Zirak said thoughtfully. "The archive contains more than just information. It contains working prototypes of our defensive technologies." He led Elena deeper into the facility, to a section that had remained sealed even from him. As they approached, the barriers recognized Elena's genetic signature and dissolved. Inside was a collection of devices that looked like crystalline jewelry, but Elena's enhanced senses could detect the incredible power contained within each piece. These were personal force field generators, quantum communication devices, and most importantly, a complete set of portable dimensional scanners. With these, Zirak explained as Elena carefully examined the devices, you can prove the Shadow Fleet's existence to the Council. The scanners will show them the dimensional rifts, the approaching bioships, everything. Elena picked up one of the scanner devices, and it immediately bonded with her nervous system. Suddenly, she could see things that had been invisible before, energy patterns in space, quantum fluctuations, and most terrifyingly, the dark stains in reality where the Shadow Fleet was forcing its way through dimensional barriers. "We need to get back to the Council immediately," she said, the urgency clear in her voice. "But they'll arrest us the moment we appear. I'm officially a fugitive now, and you're supposed to be dead." "Not dead," Zirak corrected with something that might have been a smile, merely delayed. "But you are correct about our legal status. We will need allies within the Council structure." Elena thought about the various researchers and officials she had worked with over the years. Most of them viewed humans as primitive newcomers, but there were a few who had shown genuine respect for human insights. "Dr. Kethler," she said suddenly, "the Voidian xenobiologist. He's been studying humanity's rapid technological development. If anyone would be willing to listen to evidence of ancient intervention, it would be him. Can you contact him without alerting security?" Zirak asked. Elena pulled out her quantum communicator, then paused. "If I use standard channels, they'll trace the signal immediately. But with this new equipment," she activated one of the Dragon devices, and her communicator's capabilities expanded dramatically. Suddenly, she could access quantum encrypted channels that existed outside normal spacetime. "Dr. Kethlar," she transmitted on his private research frequency. "This is Elena Vasquez. I know you're probably being told I'm a traitor, but I have evidence of a threat to the entire galaxy. Can you meet me at coordinates I'm sending you?" The response came back almost immediately. "Elena, the entire Council is looking for you. They say you helped the Dragon escape before his execution. Is that true?" "Yes, but not for the reasons they think. The Dragon has been trying to warn us about an invasion that's coming in 18 months. I have proof. but I need someone with your standing in the scientific community to validate it. There was a long pause before Kethlar responded. The coordinates you sent are in restricted space. That entire system is off limits, because the planet contains technology that could save all of us, Elena replied. Kethlar, you've studied human development. You know there are anomalies in our evolutionary pattern. This is the explanation for all of it. Another pause then. I will come. But Elena, if this is some kind of deception, it will mean the end of human participation in the Galactic Council. If I'm wrong about this threat, Elena said grimly, there won't be a Galactic Council left to worry about. As they waited for Dr. Kethlar to arrive, Elena and Zyrak gathered the most critical pieces of equipment from the archive, the dimensional scanners, the quantum shield generators, and most importantly, a complete copy of the analysis on the Shadow Fleet's dimensional anchor. There's something else, Zyrak said as they prepared to leave the archive. The file you accessed mentioned something called the human key. Did you understand what that referred to? Elena shook her head. I saw the reference, but the details were in a section I couldn't decode. Dr. Kethlar's ship landed with obvious caution, his sensors undoubtedly detecting the massive energy readings from the crystalline city. The Voidian scientist emerged slowly, his translucent form shimmering with nervous energy as he approached Elena and the dragon. By the void's edge, he whispered, staring at Zyrak in amazement. The readings from this creature. Elena, this dragon is generating energy patterns I've never seen before. That's because his people were working with technologies that are thousands of years ahead of anything we have. Elena explained quickly. Kethlar, you need to see this. She activated the dimensional scanner, and immediately the space around them filled with holographic displays showing energy patterns invisible to normal sensors. Kethlar's breathing apparatus made rapid clicking sounds as he studied the data. These quantum fluctuations, he said, his scientific excitement overriding his caution. They're showing dimensional stress fractures across half the galaxy. How is this possible? Because something massive is forcing its way through from another dimension, Elena said grimly. Show him, Zyrak. The dragon activated his necklace, projecting the complete analysis of the Shadow Fleet's approach. Kethlar watched in growing horror as the data revealed hundreds of bioships consuming matter and energy as they traveled toward their galaxy. This can't be real, Kethlar stammered. Our long-range sensors would have detected something this massive. Your sensors can't detect interdimensional travel, Zyrak explained, his voice carrying the weight of terrible knowledge. The Shadow Fleet exists partially outside normal spacetime. They only become fully visible when they emerge to feed. Elena pulled up the historical records from the Dragon Archive, showing the destruction of the Dragon homeworld and dozens of other civilizations. The Voidian scientist studied the data with growing alarm. The energy signatures match theoretical models for trans-dimensional entities, he admitted reluctantly. But Elena, even if this is all true, what can the Council do? Our combined fleets would be meaningless against something this powerful. Not meaningless if we have the right weapons, Elena said, activating another section of the archive data. The dragons developed defensive technologies specifically designed to fight these creatures. But we need the Council's resources to build them on a galactic scale. She showed him the quantum shield generators, the dimensional anchor weapons, and most importantly, the location of the Shadow Fleet's home dimension anchor point. If we can destroy their dimensional anchor, she explained, we can trap them in their own dimension permanently, but it would require the largest coordinated military operation in galactic history. Kethlar was quiet for several minutes, processing everything he had seen. Finally, he looked up at Elena with an expression of grim determination. I believe you, he said simply. The evidence is too comprehensive to be fabricated, and the energy readings I'm detecting from both you and the dragon confirm impossible technological capabilities. But Elena, the Council will never authorize an operation like this based on the word of a human researcher and an escaped prisoner. Then we need to give them a demonstration they can't ignore, Elena said. Can you arrange an emergency session of the Science Directorate? Possible, Kethlar replied slowly. But you realize that the moment you appear, security will try to arrest you both. Zyrak spoke for the first time since the Voidians' arrival. Let them try. The archive has provided me with full access to my people's technologies. I am no longer the helpless prisoner they knew. To demonstrate his point, The dragon activated a personal shield generator. Energy flowed around his massive form like liquid light, creating a barrier that Elena's enhanced senses could tell would deflect almost any known weapon. The same technology can protect Elena, Zirak continued. But more importantly, it can protect the demonstration I intend to provide. Over the next several hours, they planned their approach carefully. Kethlar would call for an emergency science directorate meeting, claiming he had discovered evidence of a massive threat to galactic security. Elena and Zirak would appear during the meeting to present their evidence, protected by dragon technology from any arrest attempts. There's something else we need to discuss, Elena said as they prepared to leave Kepler 442b. The archive mentioned something called the human key. Do either of you have any idea what that might refer to? Kethlar's form flickered with interest. I've been studying human genetics for years, he said. There are anomalies in your species' development that suggest artificial enhancement, rapid brain development, unusually efficient neural networks, and most puzzling, dormant genetic sequences that serve no apparent biological function. Those sequences, Zirak said slowly, were my people's greatest gift to humanity. They contain the ability to interface directly with our technology, to think in the mathematical patterns necessary for trans-dimensional manipulation. Elena felt a chill of understanding. You're saying that humans are the only species that can operate dragon technology at full capacity? More than that, Zirak replied gravely. When the final battle comes, only a human pilot will be able to navigate the dimensional rifts to reach the Shadow Fleet's anchor point. The implications were staggering. Not only did humanity hold the key to understanding dragon technology, but they would be essential to any plan to stop the Shadow Fleet permanently. They departed Kepler 442b in Kethlar's ship, with Zirak traveling alongside them in a protective energy field generated by his technological enhancements. The journey to the council headquarters took 6 hours, during which Elena continued studying the archive data on her portable devices. Kethlar, she said as they approached the massive space station that served as the galactic government's center. When you call this emergency meeting, emphasize the threat to the Voidian homeworld specifically. According to these projections, your system will be one of the first targets. The Voidian's form went completely still. What do you mean? Elena shared the Shadow Fleet's projected attack pattern. They weren't simply consuming random systems. They were targeting the most energy-rich worlds first, building strength for larger conquests. The Voidian homeworld's quantum reactors make it an ideal target, Elena explained sadly. Based on their historical patterns, they'll hit your system within the first 6 months of their arrival. When they docked at the council station, Kethlar immediately contacted the science directorate while Elena and Zirak remained hidden in the ship. Within an hour, he had managed to arrange an emergency session, claiming he had evidence of an imminent threat to multiple council worlds. 14 directors have agreed to attend, he reported, including 3 from the Military Advisory Board. But Elena, security is actively searching for you throughout the station. Then we make a dramatic entrance, Elena said grimly, activating the dragon shield technology around herself. Sometimes the only way to get people's attention is to do something impossible. They entered the science directorate chamber through the main doors, despite multiple security checkpoints and active arrest warrants. The dragon technology made them essentially invisible to scanners until they chose to reveal themselves. Elena materialized in the center of the chamber, surrounded by shocked directors from dozens of different species. Zirak appeared beside her, his massive form causing several representatives to leap from their seats in alarm. Distinguished members of the directorate, Elena began before anyone could speak. I am here to present evidence of a threat that will destroy our galaxy within 18 months if we do not act immediately. Arrest them, shouted the crystalline harmonic representative. This human is a fugitive and the dragon should have been executed. You are welcome to try, Elena said calmly, as security guards bounced harmlessly off her energy shields. But I suggest you examine this evidence first. She activated the dimensional scanner, filling the chamber with holographic displays of the approaching Shadow Fleet. The representatives fell silent as they studied the impossible data, showing hundreds of bioships moving through space that shouldn't exist. This is fabricated, declared the ethereal counselor. No force this size could approach our galaxy undetected. Zirak stepped forward, his voice carrying across the chamber like distant thunder. Because your sensors cannot detect trans-dimensional travel, but with the technology my people left behind, We can not only see them approaching, but we can stop them. The presentation continued for 2 hours, with Elena and Zirak providing overwhelming evidence of the threat and the solutions available in the Dragon archives. By the end, even the most skeptical directors were asking technical questions instead of demanding arrests. "Assuming this is all real," said the military advisory representative, "what exactly are you proposing?" Elena activated the final section of her presentation, showing the location of the dimensional anchor and the type of weapon needed to destroy it. "A coordinated strike force using Dragon technology," she said. "Quantum shields to protect our ships, dimensional weapons to fight their biovessels, and a human pilot to navigate the dimensional rifts to their home base." "One pilot?" asked the Voidian military advisor. "To carry out the most important mission in galactic history?" Elena's strike vessel, the Starborn Legacy, slipped through the dimensional rift just as the Shadow Fleet's main force engaged the galactic defense fleets. Behind her, space erupted in brilliant flashes as quantum weapons met bioorganic shields. But Elena's attention was focused ahead, on the swirling chaos of interdimensional space. The crossing was unlike anything she could have imagined. Reality twisted around her ship in patterns that hurt to perceive directly. Colors that had no names flowed past the viewports, and the ship's instruments struggled to maintain coherent readings, in a realm where normal physics held no meaning. Dragon, technology adapting to dimensional distortions. The ship's bio-neural interface reported in her mind. Neural pathway integration at 97%. "Elena, can you feel the genetic guidance activating?" She could. The DNA sequences planted by the Dragon civilization thousands of years ago were awakening, flooding her consciousness with navigational instincts that bypassed rational thought. She didn't steer the ship so much as become one with it, following currents of possibility through the dimensional maze. Hours passed, or perhaps minutes, or maybe years. Time had no consistent meaning in this place between realities. Elena's enhanced senses began detecting other dimensional rifts, pathways leading to different universes where the same terrible drama was playing out. Through one rift, she glimpsed a galaxy of crystalline beings fighting desperately against organic ships that devoured their silicon-based worlds. Through another, she saw energy beings of pure thought retreating before biovessels that fed on consciousness itself. The Shadow Fleet isn't just attacking our reality, she realized, speaking to the ship's interface. They're doing this everywhere across infinite dimensions. How many civilizations have already fallen? The genetic memories stirring in her mind provided a partial answer. Thousands of realities had been consumed, their matter and energy converted to fuel the Shadow Fleet's expansion across the multiverse. But she also sensed something else. Other strike missions like hers launched by desperate civilizations in dozens of parallel dimensions. Most had failed. The dimensional anchor was heavily defended, and the Shadow Fleet had learned from each attack, adapting their defenses accordingly. But a few missions had succeeded in causing significant damage, weakening the anchor's stability. "I'm not the first to attempt this," Elena whispered, understanding flooding through her. "The Dragon genetic programming isn't just giving me navigation data. It's providing a complete tactical analysis based on every previous attempt." The Starborn Legacy emerged from the dimensional corridor into a realm that defied description. This was the Shadow Fleet's home dimension, a place where entropy had been weaponized and reality itself was being slowly consumed. The dimensional anchor hung in the center of this nightmare realm like a massive tumor in the fabric of space-time. It was enormous, larger than most planets, and crawling with defensive bioships that had been left behind to guard it. But Elena's enhanced senses could see its weakness. Hairline fractures in its quantum structure where previous attacks had taken their toll. "Beginning attack approach," Elena announced, knowing that somewhere in normal space-time, the quantum entanglement communicator might still be carrying her words to the galactic fleet. "The anchor is damaged but still functional. I can see where to strike for maximum effect." The defensive bioships detected her approach and swarmed toward the Starborn Legacy. Elena engaged the Dragon quantum weapons, watching as dimensional energy tore through the organic vessels like paper. But for every ship she destroyed, 3 more emerged from the anchor's surface. There are too many of them, she realized, even as her ship's shields deflected attacks that would have vaporized normal matter. "I need to get closer to the anchor itself." Elena activated the ship's most advanced capability, temporary dimensional phasing. The Starborn legacy flickered out of normal space-time, becoming a probability ghost that could pass through solid matter. It was incredibly dangerous and could only be maintained for minutes before the ship's quantum coherence collapsed. But it allowed her to bypass the defensive fleet entirely. She rematerialized directly above the anchor's surface, close enough to see the intricate quantum machinery that kept the dimensional doorways open. The genetic memories in her mind provided detailed targeting information, showing her exactly where to strike. Elena armed the Dragon's most powerful weapon, a dimensional collapse torpedo that would create a chain reaction in the anchor's quantum structure. But as she prepared to fire, she detected something that made her pause. "There are life signs inside the anchor," she reported in amazement. "Massive bioneural networks. The Shadow Fleet isn't just using this as a doorway, they're using it as a processing center for all the consciousness they've consumed." The realization hit her like a physical blow. Every sapient being the Shadow Fleet had devoured across thousands of realities was still alive inside the anchor, their consciousness trapped and being slowly processed into energy to fuel further dimensional expansion. "I can't just destroy it," Elena whispered. "There are billions of trapped minds in there, maybe trillions." But the genetic programming in her DNA was providing another option, one that Zirak had hinted at but never fully explained. The ultimate capability that the Dragon civilization had encoded into humanity. The power to reshape dimensional frameworks themselves. Elena felt the ship's bioneural interface merge completely with her consciousness as she accessed abilities that no human had ever used before. She could sense the dimensional anchor's quantum structure in perfect detail. And more importantly, she could see how to modify it instead of destroying it. "Not destruction," she said, her voice taking on harmonics that resonated across multiple dimensions. "Liberation." Elena reached out with her enhanced consciousness, touching the quantum foundations of the dimensional anchor. Instead of collapsing its structure, she began to transform it, using the genetic algorithms planted by the Dragons to reprogram its function. The anchor had been designed to create doorways for the Shadow Fleet to spread their darkness. But with careful manipulation, it could be converted into a beacon that would call all the trapped consciousness home to their original dimensions. The process was excruciating. Elena felt her individual identity stretching across multiple realities as she worked to rewire quantum structures that existed on scales beyond normal comprehension. Part of her consciousness touched the trapped minds within the anchor, experiencing their accumulated suffering and desperate hope. "Hold on," she whispered to the billions of imprisoned souls. "I'm bringing you home." The transformation took hours that felt like centuries. Elena's human form began to dissolve as her consciousness expanded beyond the limits of individual existence. But she maintained her focus on the task. The genetic programming guided her, showing her how to create stable pathways back to every reality the Shadow Fleet had violated. When the work was complete, the dimensional anchor had become something entirely new, a restoration matrix that would return stolen consciousness and matter to their points of origin across the multiverse. Elena activated the matrix, and reality exploded with light. Across thousands of dimensions, the effects were immediate. Civilizations that had been consumed generations ago suddenly found their lost ones returning. Dead worlds came back to life as their stolen matter was restored. The Shadow Fleet bioships, deprived of their dimensional support network, began shutting down across the multiverse. In Elena's home dimension, the Galactic Fleet watched in amazement as the attacking bioships simply stopped functioning. Admiral Thesakar received the final transmission from the quantum entanglement communicator, just as the restoration wave reached their reality. "Elena to Galactic Fleet," her voice carried across space, though it now had harmonics that suggested she was speaking from multiple dimensions simultaneously. "Mission accomplished. The Shadow Fleet is neutralized across all realities. The trapped consciousness is being returned home." "Elena," Dr. Kethlar's voice came back through the communicator. "What happened to you? Your quantum signature is impossible." Elena's laughter carried warmth that seemed to touch every member of the Galactic Fleet. "I found out what it really means to be human, Kethlar. We're not just one species in one dimension. We're the children of dragons who scattered themselves across reality to plant the seeds of hope wherever darkness threatened to take hold." The restoration continued for days, with beings and worlds returning to life across countless realities. Elena found that she could observe it all, her consciousness existing simultaneously in every dimension where the dragon genetic programming had taken root. She was no longer just Elena Vasquez, human researcher. She had become something new, a guardian consciousness that existed between dimensions, watching over the multiverse to ensure that the darkness never again found fertile ground to grow. In her home dimension, humanity was honored as the species that had saved not just their galaxy, but all realities. The Dragon Archives became the foundation for a new age of interdimensional cooperation, as civilizations across the multiverse learned to communicate and share knowledge through the quantum networks Elena had established. Zyrak, the last dragon, lived to see his people's ultimate plan fulfilled. On his deathbed, surrounded by the greatest minds from dozens of species, he smiled as he felt Elena's presence touch his consciousness one final time. "Well done, little star daughter," he whispered. "Your people have become everything we hoped they could be." Elena's response came not in words, but in a feeling of gratitude and love that touched every sapient being in the galaxy. The promise that no matter how dark the universe might become, there would always be those willing to light a candle and guide others home. The last dragon died peacefully, knowing that his people's legacy would live forever in the children of Earth who had become guardians of the infinite. The next 12 months transformed the galaxy in ways that would have been impossible without the dragon technology. Every major shipyard was converted to produce quantum-shielded vessels, while the most brilliant minds from dozens of species worked together to understand and improve upon the ancient dragon designs. Elena found herself at the center of it all, no longer a minor human researcher but the key figure in the galaxy's survival plan. The Dragon Archives had continued to unlock their secrets as she spent more time interfacing with the technology, revealing capabilities that even Zyrak had not known existed. "The bioneural interface is adapting faster than we anticipated," Dr. Kethlar reported during one of their daily briefings. "Elena's brain patterns are showing evolutionary changes that suggest permanent enhancement." Elena touched the dragon pendant that now hung around her neck, a gift from the archive that had replaced Zyrak's original necklace. Through it, she could sense the approach of the Shadow Fleet with increasing clarity, and the knowledge was terrifying. "They're 6 months ahead of schedule," she announced to the assembled War Council. "The dimensional rifts are expanding faster because they're feeding on dark matter as they travel. We need to accelerate our preparations." Admiral Thesakar, the ethereal military commander, studied the latest sensor data with obvious concern. "Our combined fleets now number over 10,000 vessels, all equipped with dragon technology. Is that sufficient?" "For the initial defense, yes," Elena replied, calling up tactical projections. "But remember, this isn't just about stopping them here. We need to reach their dimensional anchor and destroy it permanently, or they'll just keep coming back stronger." Zyrak, who had become the unofficial ambassador between dragon technology and galactic engineering teams, raised his massive head from where he had been reviewing construction reports. "The Strike Force vessel is nearly complete," he announced. "The ship that will carry Elena to the Shadow Fleet's home dimension. But I must warn you all, the dimensional crossing will be unlike anything any of our species has ever attempted." The strike vessel was a masterpiece of combined technologies. Built around a dragon quantum core, it incorporated the best defensive and offensive systems from every council member species. Most importantly, it was designed to be piloted by a single individual whose nervous system could interface directly with the ship's bioneural networks. "I've been running simulations," Elena said, activating holographic displays of the planned mission. "The dimensional crossing will take approximately 4 hours of subjective time, but the temporal distortions mean that months could pass in normal spacetime. The fleet will need to hold the line without knowing if the mission has succeeded until I return." "If you return," Admiral Thesakar corrected grimly. "Elena, you understand that this is essentially a suicide mission. No one has ever traveled to another dimension and returned. No one has ever had dragon technology to guide them," Elena replied with more confidence than she felt. "The archives contain detailed maps of the dimensional pathways, and Zyrak's people made this journey before, even if they didn't survive to return." As the months passed, Elena spent increasing amounts of time in the archive chambers that had been constructed on several council worlds, allowing her to access the full depth of dragon knowledge. Each session left her more changed, more connected to the ancient wisdom of Zyrak's people. It was during one of these deep archive sessions that she made a discovery that changed everything. "Zyrak," she called urgently, her voice echoing through the crystalline chamber. "You need to see this. I found the real reason your people chose humanity." The dragon approached, his ancient eyes filled with curiosity and concern. Elena had activated a section of the archive that had been sealed even from her enhanced access. Until now. "It's not just about our genetic compatibility with your technology," Elena explained, her hands shaking as she manipulated the holographic displays. "Your people didn't just plant seeds in human consciousness. They planted something much more specific. The display showed detailed genetic analysis of human DNA, but highlighted sections that Elena had never seen before. Buried deep within the human genome were sequences that weren't just enhanced intelligence or technological aptitude. These are dimensional coordinates," she whispered in amazement. "Every human carries a complete map of transdimensional space in their genetic structure." Zyrak's massive form went completely still as he studied the data. "Impossible," he breathed. "This level of genetic programming would require sacrificing your entire species to encode it properly." Elena finished, understanding dawning on her face. "Your people didn't just hide from the Shadow Fleet. They deliberately allowed themselves to be consumed, using their life force to program these coordinates into human DNA. The implications were staggering. Every human was potentially capable of dimensional travel, but the ability was locked away, accessible only through dragon technology. More importantly, the genetic maps contained something that even the archives had not revealed: the location of other Shadow Fleet anchor points throughout the multiverse. "Elena," Zyrak said slowly, "if this is true, then the mission is far more important than we realized. You won't just be destroying one-dimensional anchor, you'll be gaining access to the entire Shadow Fleet network." Elena felt the weight of destiny settling on her shoulders. She wasn't just the galaxy's last hope. She was potentially the key to stopping the Shadow Fleet across all dimensions, in all realities where they had spread their darkness. The final months of preparation took on a desperate urgency as the Shadow Fleet's approach became visible to normal sensors. The first bioships began emerging from dimensional rifts at the galaxy's edge, massive organic vessels that consumed entire asteroid fields as they passed. "First contact in 72 hours, Admiral Thesakar announced during the final War Council meeting. "All fleets are in position. Elena, the strike vessel is ready for launch." Elena stood before the assembled leaders of galactic civilization, feeling the dragon technology humming through her enhanced nervous system. She could sense the approaching darkness, the hunger of the Shadow Fleet, and something else: the distant call of other realities where the same battle was being fought. "I want you all to understand something," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "This isn't just about our galaxy anymore. If the genetic programming is correct, there are thousands of realities being consumed by these creatures. This mission isn't just about stopping them here, it's about freeing the entire multiverse." Dr. Kethlar stepped forward, his translucent form flickering with emotion. "Elena, the quantum entanglement communicator will allow us to maintain contact during the dimensional crossing, but only for the first few minutes. After that, you'll be completely on your own." "Not completely alone," Elena corrected, touching the dragon pendant at her throat. "I'll have the collected wisdom of an entire civilization guiding me, and the genetic legacy of every human who ever dreamed of reaching the stars." As the meeting concluded and the final preparations were made, Zyrak approached Elena privately. "There is something else," he said quietly. "Something I have not told the Council. The genetic programming your people carry, it includes more than just dimensional coordinates." "What do you mean?" Elena asked, though part of her already suspected the answer. "The ability to not just travel between dimensions but to reshape them," Zyrak explained. "In the final extremity, if the anchor cannot be destroyed by conventional means, you have the power to collapse the entire dimensional framework that supports the Shadow Fleet's existence." Elena felt a chill of understanding. "And what would that do to me?" "I do not know," Zyrak admitted sadly. "My people's records suggest that such an action would scatter your consciousness across all realities simultaneously. You might become something beyond individual existence, a force that exists in all dimensions at once." Elena nodded slowly, She had suspected that the mission might require the ultimate sacrifice, but knowing the details made it real in a way that statistics and projections never could. "If that's what it takes to stop them," she said firmly, "then that's what I'll do." The Shadow Fleet arrived exactly on schedule, emerging from dimensional rifts like a plague of living darkness. The combined fleets of the galaxy met them at the edge of the Veil Nebula, and the greatest space battle in galactic history began. As Elena launched in the strike vessel, watching the first exchanges of fire between quantum shields and bioorganic weapons, she knew that everything depended on the next few hours. The dimensional crossing lay ahead, and with it, the fate of not just her galaxy, but all realities where life struggled against the consuming darkness.